Okay, so finally, section 3, so 7.3, preparing the trial balance. So the trial balance is something that we're going to use to make sure that our debits are equal to our credits. It is the 5th step in the accounting cycle after we do our posting, and it ensures that we've posted things properly. So proving the ledger. So we're going to add up all the debit balances and all the credit balances, and we're going to compare the two to say that we have proven that the ledger is in balance. And the way that we do that is by preparing a trial balance. A trial balance is a listing of all the ledger accounts, their names, their account numbers, and their balances. If the totals are the same, the trial balance is said to be in balance. If the totals aren't equal, there was an error made in journalizing, posting, or preparing the trial balance. And so that's where the biggest frustration is finding your own error. We're going to talk about that in detail in this section. But what's interesting, though, if debits and credits are equal, that doesn't mean that you're error-free. Like here's an example where we had a credit sale. So our revenue came in and it was supposed to be on credit. But instead, we posted it to cash as the debit instead of accounts receivable. So debits are still equal to credits, but we've overstated cash and understated accounts receivable. And so we do have an error. So it's awesome when things are in balance, but it's not always 100% correct. So here is a trial balance, what a trial balance looks like. Excuse me, the top of any report answers 3 questions: who, what, and when. Always, 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 we have 3 things at the top that answer those questions. Who is the name of the business? What is the statement that we're preparing, in this case, a trial balance? And then when is the date of this current transaction? Sorry, not transactions, report. Here we have a listing of all the account numbers and the account names. And then we're going to take the balance from the ledger account. So like we're gonna do an equal sign right here, and we're gonna come over and grab the balance down here of cash. And we're gonna do an equals right here for accounts receivable, city news, and we're gonna come here and we're gonna grab that balance. We're gonna do that so that we don't have an error in transferring the numbers back and forth, which seems kind of silly, but happens all the time. So what if you do have an error? Bunch of steps here to go through, with some of the obvious being in the beginning and then some of the harder things at the end. Maybe you just didn't add the columns up correctly on your trial balance. So if we look at a trial balance here, did you do an auto sum here? And did you do one over here as well? So that could be a problem. Did you, is the difference between the debit and credits like 10, 100, 1,000, or so on? And that's caused sometimes just by, moving the numbers over and you're off by a number. So that could happen quite easily. Next, do you have something called a transposition error? A transposition error is something where you switch the 2 numbers. So instead of 72, you wrote 27. And what's cool about that is the difference between the 2 amounts. So 72 minus 27, whatever that is, it's divisible by 9. So if the difference between the error is divisible by 9, you have a transposition error, which is kind of cool. The other type of error that you may have is something called a slide, where your decimal point is off. So instead of $1,800, you write 180 or 18,000. So you're forgetting a 0 or adding a 0. That's called a slide error. Did you forget an account? So you're off by 725, and you go over here and you look in your ledger and you have an account that has a 725 balance. Maybe you just forgot to list it here in your trial balance. So that's a common one. Did you put one of them in the wrong column? So instead of putting cash in the debit column, you have it in the credit column. So if your error is like double or out of balance by something when you divide it by 2, so let's say it's off by 300 and one of your ledger accounts is a 150, but if you have it in the opposite account, you're doubling the problem. That could be a problem. And then 6 and 7 are terrible, but if you can't find the problem with one of those 5 steps, you might have to go back and make sure that you did your balances correctly in here. Did you use formulas and do that correctly? So that one's kind of painful. And that 7 really stinks. It says, hey, maybe you should go back to the journal entries and see if you can find the mistake there. Not awesome at all. Okay, so what do we do if we find a mistake? So different mistakes take certain journal entries and others don't. So when mistakes are made, one rule applies. We're never supposed to erase. So we're supposed to cross things out and write over the top of it. In Excel, we're just going to rekey in new numbers. There are 3 types of errors. An error in the journal that has not been posted yet. An error in posting to the ledger when the journal entry is correct, you just posted wrong. And an error in the journal entry that has been posted. So in chapter 6, we talked about the first one. We're just going to fix it in the journal. Nothing happened because we didn't do this piece yet. The posting part is the piece that if it's been done, then we have to make a correction. So in this case, it hasn't. So we're just going to correct the journal. When an error is made after posting, so we've already posted, you need to follow up and do a correcting entry. So you actually have to do a new journal entry to make the correction. So on November 15th, here's our example. We found an error in the journal made on November 2nd. A $100 check to pay the electricity bill was journalized and posted to maintenance. Okay, so instead of a utility expense, we put it in maintenance. So our correcting entry right here is going to be to, oh, that's not it, sorry. Here's what they did, here's what it should have been. Okay, so the correcting entry right here has got to be to get it out of maintenance expense. So we credit that, and then we put it debit into the utilities expense. And we would have had to written a memorandum for that correcting entry. And now when we post it, we're going to post it just like we did with the 6 steps. But in this case, this is going to put a correcting entry in the description. So we know that for sure. Okay, so after this, I'm going to do a quick problem and show you again how to do some posting.